Purple Robe here, and today I'm going to review the Apple TV miniseries Shining Girls. It's been a weekly show that just ended a couple of days before this video is premiering. I watched all 8 episodes, and I'm going to tell you what I think of it. There may be some spoilers, but I'll try to keep them minor in case you want to watch it after my review. I'll start by saying the show, from my point of view, begins with 2 strikes against it. Strike 1, I don't particularly care for Elizabeth Moss, who is the show's protagonist. I know she's Hollywood's darling right now, Handmaid's Tale, and like everything she does, but I don't care for her, and especially I didn't like her character in this show. And one of the major reasons why I didn't like it is because of Strike 2, which is I read the book and totally freaking loved it. How can that be a strike against it, you asked? Because they changed the story quite a bit. And I don't think I liked even a single change they made, including Elizabeth Moss's characters completely different than the woman in the book. So take that how you will. All right, Shining Girls, based on the book The Shining Girls by Lauren Bukes. Why the hell they cut off the I have no idea. But it's about a woman named Sharon Leeds, who before our story even starts has changed her name to Kirby Mizrachi to help escape the trauma of being attacked 6 years previous. She barely survived, and since that moment her life has just not been the same in many ways. As a reporter for the local paper, she was on the verge of covering her first real story. However, afterward, she was only able to hang on to a lowly position in the archives department. And that's not all. Every so often, things simply change in her life. For example, her cat, Grendel, suddenly becomes her dog, Grendel. And the desk at her office has always been in the corner until she walks away one day, and when she returns a moment later, it's on the other side of the room. It's at this time, 6 years after her attack, and this is 1992. The present is 1992. And in 1992, the body of a woman who went missing in 1990 turns up in a sewer drain, and it turns out that she was cut up in exactly the same way that Kirby herself was. Dum, dum, dum! A serial killer, maybe? But no one will believe her, not the police, or the people at the paper, or her mother, or anybody. Another part of her attack was that her killer left a trinket in her wound, and Kirby wants to find out if a similar trinket was left in the body of the girl in the drainpipe. When alcoholic reporter Dan Velasquez, played by Wagner Moura, decides he just might believe her, the two attempt to solve and catch what might be a serial killer who's been impossibly stalking women from their childhood until he murders them for over 60 years. Okay, that's a very oversimplified version, but you get the idea. It's also not giving anything away to tell you that in essence, Shining Girls is a time-traveling story. It's basically about a magical house that gives its owner this amazing ability. Though it won't work for just anyone, it does work for our antagonist, Jamie Bell, as killer Harper Curtis. I actually liked Jamie Bell. He was one of the very few characters that I enjoyed, but the script definitely didn't give him much help. There were so many holes in his backstory. I mean, okay, he's shown to be a survivor who does some questionable things in order to make it through his tour in World War I. And that could be understandable. And he was also shown to be a thief. But how this changes him into a crazed serial killer is quite a leap, especially since all he really seems to care about after the war is hooking back up with the woman that he loves. And why he does what he does, killing all these people, it's never really explained in the story. And I understand that time travel stories are difficult, but Shining Girls does no favors to itself by choosing to mess around with the space-time continuum, a la Back to the Future and many, many other shows, whereas actions in the past can radically change the future. And you see those changes in Shining Girls as it plays out, from Kirby's aforementioned pets and desk, to changes in her hairstyle, in her job, even in relationship status, which is kind of cool, right? But there was no rhyme or reason for what changed, for why it changed. It was kind of like whatever the plot needed. And if you're going to do this, fine, but be consistent. Like when the killer does something in, say, 1959, like murder somebody. Yeah, it could affect Kirby in 1992. But when Harper kills someone in the present in 1992, why would all of her past suddenly change? Spoiler, this happens more than once. And if he kills someone in 1959 and, say, her dog changes into a cat, which is, a change, why, when he kills somebody at another time, is she suddenly, completely different person? No consistency. And the idea that this guy, Harper Curtis, had killed at least, that we know of, 7 women in the same city in a 20-year time frame in exactly the same way, and the cops never catch on, it's just silly. Making your characters stupid is only one tiny example of really lazy writing that you see in this show. But there's a lot of it, especially in the parallel realities parts. Again, it's a cool idea, but if you're going to do it right. Through 6 years and who knows how many murders after Kirby's attack, it is suggested that small things are changing in her reality. But by the time the present story starts, the changes are like huge. One moment she's single, and the next minute she's married. And by the end, these enormous changes are occurring daily, and it's never explained why. And I hate to bring up the contrasts between the book, because I thought the book was so much better, but writer Bukes didn't leave such inconsistencies. First of all, she didn't do the whole alternate reality thing. And second, Harper Curtis is much more careful about his killings. He spreads them out over many, many years and even sometimes disposes of bodies in like different times. And while the reasoning behind why Curtis is killing these specific women is somewhat supernatural in the book, at least it's defined and makes sense. I've no idea why he killed these women in the show, or indeed why they're considered shining women. One reviewer that I watched posited the idea that he hunted women who were on the cusp of their greatest successes, i.e. about to shine, and then murdered them on the eve of that success. And while it's an interesting idea, and he may have actually done that to 1 or 2 of the girls that he murders, it's never really mentioned in the show. Or how he knew about these successes. I mean, did he go 50 years into the future, find a bunch of really successful women, research the events where they had these big triumphs, and then go back into the past when they were children and then stalk them for years and years until finally it culminates in him murdering them? If he did this, why? Why would he do it? And again, if he did it, it was never mentioned, never explained in the show. Eventually, we get to a somewhat messy and incredibly coincidental ending, where things just kind of fall into place and characters do things for no other reason than the writers wanted to wrap things up really neatly. Didn't really care for that episode. Didn't really care for any of the episodes, in fact. I mean, there wasn't even one where I was like, okay, I'm really not enjoying this show, but you know what? That episode was pretty entertaining. They all had so many scenes where I stared incredulously at the screen saying, what just frickin' happened? That made absolutely no sense. And so there you have it. Shining Girls gets a big thumbs down for me. But if you're interested in a great book with a somewhat similar story, check out The Shining Girls by Lauren Bukes. Anyway, I guess that's all I've got for now. Purple Robe out.